Welcome to the Top Order podcast. Two very sombre Englishmen and one crowing Aussie with you this morning, as well as a neutral who'll no doubt bait the Englishman. We're going to talk the toss, we'll talk teams and the pitch, key performances, conspiracy theories and talking points. That's Smith's little tickle and Usman's back spasms. Has T20 cricket killed Test match batting? And where next for both teams? What prep should they do? Is Usman gone? We'll talk a little bit also about the UK TNT coverage, at least a 30-second old man rant on that. And should England just declare the Ashes and come home now? All coming up on the Top Order podcast. Stay tuned. Well, boys, round the table this evening, we are some former players. So I just want to thank all of our listeners and viewers. You've got a lot of choices of podcast. Every man and his cricketing dog seems to have an Ashes Aftermath podcast. We've got some brilliant ones out there. My favourite at the moment, I think, is the Stuart Broad and Joss Butler one. But just to set the record straight, we are former players, not for England and Nottinghamshire and Somerset and England, but we do represent Barrow, East Coast Bays, Riccarton, Townsville and Barnards Green from all around the world. So that's where our opinions are coming from. And I'll tell you what, we've got a lot of them this morning in the aftermath of this first Ashes Test match at the new Perth Stadium. We have a tradition, don't we? We always go to the winner first when we're talking about partisan series that we cover. So though it pains me, well done, Michael. We'll come to you first for your initial reaction on two helter-skelter days of Test match cricket at that Perth Millennium Falcon-like stadium.
Yeah, I don't really know how to analyse this game because I'm still coming to terms with what we witnessed. I wrote a post-day one piece Friday night, having got back from watching it with friends at about 11:45. And I just sat up for 45 minutes, just like writing this off the back wall rant about how terrible Australia's middle order was, how they couldn't keep pigeons, that we fought so hard and then we just gave it all away. And I may as well have just crossed Australia out and written England in it for day two because it was just such a contrast from day one to day two. And so many crazy things have happened in the last 48 hours. I really don't know where to start other than to just sort of shrug my shoulders and go, is this what we can expect for the next 7 weeks? At least we've got 12 days to get over the first Test match. In fact, we've got 3 extra days plus whatever the gap is between here and Brisbane to get over the craziest Test match that I can remember, Binksy.
I've written the same thing. My first note is, what on earth have we just watched? Because, like you said, England score 172 and everyone's going, wasteful England, what have they done? They've turned up here on day one at Perth, batted first and kind of thrown it all away. Then, by the end of that day, all the knives are out for Australia. You're going, okay, everyone's going, look, Khawaja's going to be dropped. That Weatherall's not up to it. This Australian batting lineup.
I think that's harsh on Weatherall. I mean, it's hard to tell whether or not he's up to it when he only
I'm not
faces
saying my opinion. I'm just
okay.
saying that everyone starts piling on Australia. All the news coverage is doing the same thing you did and going, oh look, we're in big trouble here in this series. This Australian batting lineup's not up to it. And then, by lunch, you're going, okay, well, England's 99 ahead, 1 down. You're thinking, okay, I was thinking, okay, this could be like a reverse or a repeat of the Perth Test last year where, both sides got knocked over, India piled on 500, and you're thinking, okay, it's all going to happen. And then the script just completely turns again. That second session, England's all out. I think I saw today, Brendan McCullum said he walked past Adam Gilchrist before the two teams went out for that fourth innings, and Gilly was like, "I think you probably got 32 many here." And Travis Head has just gone and flipped that on its head again and just smashed it, and it's all over on day two, and they win by 8 wickets. It's very, very bizarre Test match. And I mean, we will now. I mean, I'll throw it back to you, English boys. I know there's going to be a lot of comments about whether this was even good to watch, what kind of a Test match it was in those senses. But in terms of the roller coaster days. It has been, an absolute roller coaster for the very short time that we were on the field.
Yeah. Jamie, your first emotions and thoughts, because we'll dig into all of what the boys have sort of trailered there. But yeah, those kind of raw emotions for you after 2 days?
Yeah, so I liken this to waiting for the Phantom Menace to come out and then going to see it and being extremely disappointed. So I felt there was a big up. We've waited 4 years for this, and I kind of think it to be over in 2 days. I'm like, oh, well, okay. And fair play, hats off Baldy. Yeah, fair play to Australia, but just bizarre. Like, just couldn't. Yeah, just unbelievable. And I think that's kind of the analogy I can give is a little bit of an anticlimax in some ways. I'm not sure I'm English at the moment either. I'm trying to check my ancestry to see if I have some other affiliation, because sort of feels a bit raw in that sense as well. But they're just straight off the bat, Binksy.
Yeah. Well, Jesus, it is going to be rare for me to bring some optimism to the pod. Particularly from an English perspective. We had a social at our cricket club last night, which I went to with my family, and spent the sort of 15-minute walk, looking forward to a Guinness and a race night, and forgetting about cricket was the concept. A little bit of Greek food as well. A little food truck turns up in the car park, which is very nice. But I spent that walk talking to my eldest son, who's become a bit of a cricket badger, actually, so he consumes more cricket media than I do. And his sort of podcast playlist was all of the English podcasts. So, he'd listen to in the afternoon BBC and Broaden, Butler and Stick to Cricket and a bunch of others. He listened to a lot, and he'd formed his opinions, I think, based on the rhetoric that was coming out of those, pro England podcasts broadly. So I just challenged his thinking a little bit and said, well, flip it on your head and think about what the Australians are saying about this victory and preparation and all of those kind of things. And then for me, where I'm at and where I've got on my notes for today is I've written Ted Lasso's goldfish theory has a flaw. So for those of you that have seen the show, he tells his players to be goldfish because goldfish have got 3-second memories. And whilst I kind of agree with that in his philosophy, I think the bit that really, really concerns me is this England team are playing like goldfish. And the problem with that goldfish is, yes, they might be able to play in the moment, but they never learn. And that's the biggest thing for me is England do have to take some learnings from this performance, I think is what I want to get across. And I don't think I'm going to go as far as they should play 17 warm-up games between now and the Brisbane Test match. In fact, they've got 13 days. They might want to, just fly back to England, have a sort of winter greens game of golf, and then rock back up in Brisbane. I'm being slightly facetious, but I actually don't sort of subscribe to a lot of those theories. But let's cast our minds back not that long ago to day one of a 2-day Test match. Baldy and all of you, I'll come to you. But what I want to get really is an English perspective and an Aussie perspective on that toss and the decision that England took after having literally chased on every single opportunity that they've had pretty much to changing that plan. Probably based on some data, yeah. But what did we think about the toss and the teams leading into day one?
Yeah, I mean, from an Australian perspective, I think the team was pretty straightforward, right? They established that Cameron Green had enough bowling within him. I mean, he bowled one over, so that's probably enough in this Test match. But they established that he had enough bowling in him that they could go with him as the all-rounder at number 6. They picked Jake Weatherall to open and Marnus in his preferred position at number 3. No real surprises there from a selection perspective. It's not a brave decision, I think, to win the toss and bat in Perth. You know that there's going to be some lively action in the first hour of a Test match. But I actually think, I'm going to preface this by saying I think this was a really good cricket wicket. I just think both sides didn't adjust to the conditions as well as they should have. There was some deplorable batting on both sides. I think, to borrow Jamie's analogy, there were heroes and villains on both sides of this encounter. But I think from a toss perspective, I was fine with England winning the toss and batting. I think it was the right decision. I think they just didn't quite execute in the way that they should have. Having said that, they looked very comfortable when Duckett and Pope were in.
Yep.
They looked very, very comfortable, and it didn't look like the ball was doing a lot. Australia bowled very full to try and extract as much movement and swing as they could. There wasn't a lot, and England were able to capitalise early doors. I thought it was a fine decision to win the toss and bat.
Yeah, nothing to add from my camp, but yeah, it felt like an inconsequential kind of decision in terms of the game. But you make a good point there. I mean, were you boys surprised? Jamie, were you surprised when Binksy's talking about that had been the formula for England to chase down scores and kind of back themselves to score?
No, not at all. I think particularly based on the test against India last year, where there was obviously some data that had played into that. So I actually thought it was quite a positive marker as well to kind of say, right, we'll get out there, we'll get in, and being true to the Bazball approach, I suppose. Right, we'll take the Aussie bowlers down. I kind of like that. I know it kind of goes against England's philosophy of chasing, but yeah, I didn't have a problem with it. And like you were saying, Baldy, for periods it looked like a really good decision where Duckett and Brook and Pope were going. It looked like they were making a decent fist of it. My only disappointment with the pitch was I thought there was a bit too much grass on it for a Perth wicket, but maybe I'm a bit old school and probably wanted to see it a bit quicker and a bit bouncier, and it was those things, but I just felt that they'd probably left a little bit more grass on than they would normally. But I'm not.
I would challenge that though, Jamie, because there wasn't a lot of sideways movement. I mean, if you have a lot of extra grass, normally you see a little bit more nip and tuck, and there wasn't a lot early off the seam. There was a little bit of extra bounce. Doggett got a couple to carry, and I thought the English bowlers extracted the right length out of that surface incredibly well in the first hour of their bowling stint. They got the length right. Australia didn't. They were too full trying to get the ball to swing. Boland was way too full opening the bowling. I think that's new for him. He normally comes on first change for Australia as that third seamer. But Binksy, were you expecting England, having picked those five seamers, to win the toss and bowl first to try and put the cat amongst the pigeons and put Australia's batters, who were probably the weaker side of our two components, batting or bowling? Were you expecting England to bowl first and try and put pressure on that way?
Well, I think certainly going to bed on whatever night it was, the night before the test match, that was, you kind of looked at all the data, you looked at the sides that you thought were going to be picked, and you looked at the way England have gone about their cricket. You were surprised, or I was surprised, when my alarm went off literally 5 minutes before the first ball, because it was 2:30 in the morning, first ball here in the UK. I was actually on a work conference, so I was in a foreign hotel room. Woke up 5 minutes before the start. I'd made sure my app was going to work and all that kind of jazz. So I was surprised to see that, because I thought if the coin came down for England, I thought they'd be bowling, and I thought if the coin came down for Australia, they'd be batting. I was certainly surprised by the outcome, but actually pretty happy that England took a decision not based on, this is the way we're going to win it, but actually this is the best way we think to win this test match. We flirted a little bit on the pitch there. We get a lot of criticism in the comments, don't we, when we talk about pitches. And I think we want to cover all the elements of the game, and I think we will talk about the pitch throughout the course of the chat that we have. But I just want to get it on record, and I've said this in the Slack chat as well. And we've got some different views on the pod. I thought it was a really good cricket wicket. And I think that the thing that I think really encapsulates that is, we're talking about the wicket, and we're talking about whether it was too spicy. I don't think it was the reason the game, finished in 2 days. You would expect a cricket wicket, and particularly an Australian cricket wicket, to really be best to bat on from probably after lunch on day 2 into day 3, and then it starts to, accelerate. And look, that's not rocket science to come out with that comment. But if we look at the way that Australia were able to take that chase down, it did appear as if the pitch had, got significantly better. And I think, if England want to look very, very hard in the mirror, which they are gonna need to do in their second innings, they only batted for 34 overs, and then Australia, only needed 28 overs to knock those runs off. If England could have applied themselves for 20 or 30 overs during the course of that innings, they'd have got to the stage where that pitch was in a position to go out and score quickly and hit bowlers off their length and do all the things that their cricket or their brand of cricket wants to do. And Travis Head really has given us a masterclass in how to play our own brand of cricket. He was chewing it up off his first 20 balls, but that was getting in, and then they managed to literally make England have to change all of their bowling plans 2 or 3 times during the course of that chase. So but I thought it was a little bit disingenuous, particularly Brendan McCullum, to come out afterwards and talk about, and again, I don't want this to come the wrong way. He came out and just literally lauded Travis Head for 15 minutes in his post-match press conference, saying that 123 off 83 was the difference between the teams. It was a fantastic innings. I'm not taking anything away from that, but it was actually the application that he showed early in his innings that allowed him to do that. Hit bowlers off their length, and if we'd have had a bit of patience, we'd have been batting when those conditions were best, and probably put ourselves in a position where Australia would have been chasing 350, and that probably would have been a bridge too far as you got into day 4. But Baldy, let's come back to you in terms of, I guess, some of those key performances for Australia. Mitch Starc and obviously, we talked a little bit about Travis Head at the top of that list. Wax lyrical about them, but then also, any other things that you want to highlight out of that Australian performance?
Yeah, I do, because it's a rocks and diamonds test match for both sides, really. I think there were players that gave a really good account of themselves. There's probably 3 on each side that gave a good account of themselves, and the rest of those players, the other 8, had pretty ordinary test matches, to be fair. I think if you look at the Australians, the plaudits will go to Mitchell Starc, and we'll talk about the lion-hearted performance from Starc first and foremost, and then we'll get on to the rest of the team. His ability to strike in the first over of the test match, is almost unprecedented in the history of world cricket.
Oh, it is, isn't it? He's number 1.
He's now number 1, but he's extended his lead now by an extra 2 in this test match, taking down Crawley in the first over of both innings, and showed Australia a glimpse of what we should have been trying to do in that first hour, which is to bowl just back of a drivable length and ask the English players who are used to driving on the up to drive on the up with a little bit of extra bounce. And we saw the fruits of that in the second innings when we made our adjustments to our length, Scott Boland in particular. So I thought Starc was amazing, given that he didn't have Hoff, he didn't have Cummins supporting him, he had Doggett on debut, and he had Boland in a situation where it wasn't quite what he's used to doing for Australia, in that he was asked to bowl with the new ball rather than the old ball and try and find movement rather than just bang it into the shoebox and see what happens. So he was instrumental in getting Australia any advantage, given that Boland didn't bowl well early on day 1. In fact, he probably had his worst performance at home for Australia, if not his worst performance in a single innings for Australia in his so far reasonably illustrious test career. Lyon was a non-factor. I think, to a certain extent, even though not Travis Head, Cameron Green got the wicket of, who was it? It was Pope, LBW. He was also a non-factor, only bowled 1 over. So Starc was asked to do more than the lion's share of the work. I thought Doggett was good support early doors. I thought he was the one that found the right length, extracted extra bounce, and made life a little uncomfortable for the English players. But it was really Starc who delivered for Australia in both innings the impetus that we needed to put England under pressure. If we think about the batting,
Can I just talk a little bit more about Starc? Because I think the leadership point that you made is really good, and it sort of ties in as well to the pitch discussions that you guys were having. I thought I tend to agree with Binksy there that we always talk about balance between bat and ball, and I thought that was there. That there were at times on that first day, ball, if you bowled in the right spots, that ball that Starc bowled to Joe Root, that was the length, that was the ball that you bowled, the ball that he bowled to Crawley. I know that was, a touch wide. You can criticise Crawley for going at that ball that he...
I think you can. In the first over of the Test match, yes, you should leave that ball.
Of course you should criticise him. I'm just talking about length and saying that that's the length you want to bowl because, yes, England, we all knew that England wants to go after the ball. They talked after the game as well. McCullum as well talked about how, you're trying to, this Kookaburra ball, you're trying to get it to go soft. You're trying to,
As a batting unit,
As a batting unit. And you can do that in two ways. You can soak up the pressure, which is what Marnus and Steve Smith tried to do at times. And I thought when they really dug in, they were able to hang in there.
I want to come back to that. I want to come back to the way the work that they did and how their middle order let them down deplorably, but we'll come back to that later on.
Yeah, but then, Starc was able to lead the way by figuring out the length he needed to bowl. He was able to bowl some full balls and he was able to beat Duckett on that full ball, get him when he was going. But I think that, the leadership part is, he actually talked about it. I think Ishigua asked him afterwards, about how, did you feel extra pressure? Because you were going to this test as the leader, and he played it down. But and maybe I'm inventing, and maybe this is going a bit off track, but I will come to the English boys. I started to wonder if that hurt England in the second innings when I look at their attack, I don't know who the leader of that attack is. And so when things kind of got tough, I don't know if they knew who to turn to in terms of that. And maybe in a way, it almost feels to me like it's Stokes, whereas Stokes is on your team sheet, even if you don't necessarily rank them that way, is kind of your fifth seamer. Whereas Starc is your leading bowler. He's the one who was able to figure out, and he's able to kind of give that advice, and he was able to be the person who Australia turned to in all of the moments when they needed to kind of find a wicket. So I thought that was very impressive. I mean, boys, have I kind of invented something based on outcomes there with the English attack? I know I'm detouring a little bit from our conversation.
No, not at all. I think it's a great shout. I sensed the similar thing in terms of the body language. I thought in that second innings it looked very, and it's hard to see from a TV, but it looked quite disparate. When a team is on fire, everyone kind of, there seems an energy and a buzz, and I guess it's hard to do that. But it seemed like, I don't know, it just seemed a lack of energy at times. I think one of the things that Raj said in the channel was the decreasing in speeds for the English bowlers in the second half or second innings, and if we wind back to the first innings, to see those five was something that, it was a bit like Christmas coming early. It was amazing as an Englishman to see that. We've been looking forward to seeing Archer and Wood and Atkinson and and co on that pitch together to be able to. And we got that. We got that, and we got the results that we were after. Carl's bowling really, really well. Atkinson just sticking in there, and then the second innings, it just looked like there was a decrease in the speed, and I don't know. Maybe I'm being super critical. I just didn't think the body language was as vibrant as it could have been. But it's hard when you're chasing leather. Nothing seems to be working. There was a few miscues that...
And they were doing it on 2 hours rest, though, Jamie, right? Like, England only batted for... Even as shit as the overrates were, they only batted 34 overs. So at best, they were, off the field, those bowlers, for 2.5 hours. Then they're back out there being asked to do the job again. I'm not surprised
criticising
that
the bowlers. I'm not criticising the bowlers. I think it's more that if you're going to go hard and fast, you're going to have to, your batter's going to have to give them some respite. You're going to have to dig in there. I mean, sort of meandering around a little bit, but in the work we would do with players, we talk about going through the gearbox. Even when you're sort of, are taking this sort of baseball approach, this process approach, you've got to go. You've got to learn. The really excellent players go through the gears. They don't go from 1 to 5 or 1 to 6. They sometimes do, but then they draw it back. If you've got 18 off and over, you'll scale it back, and then you'll go. And that's a skill in itself. And I just sometimes feel that it's all about putting it in top gear as quickly as we can. And there's kind of no middle ground some of the time, and it's just about working out that gearbox based on conditions. So just that, it speaks to the goldfish theory a little bit as well and things like that. But I've meandered around there, a few little thoughts, but
yeah, for me, I actually have the reverse view on the body language piece, Jamie. I watched I watched pretty much all of the Test match, but watched that last session, and England still did the things that they've talked about for a long time. They still chased every single ball to the boundary. Pope took a reasonable catch in the outfield. Stokes was still moving the field round and trying different things. And there's no doubt in my mind that those players had given up when Australia were 170 for 1. They weren't thinking, "Oh, right, something magical is going to happen here, and we're going to take 9 for 30." But they still, I thought, had that body language of a team that believed. But yeah, back to Baldy's point on the rest and the speeds. That's going to be the case if you can't. The difference between a night's sleep and no rest on a bowling stint, I'd imagine is pretty monumental. The other thing I think I'd just throw in is Stuart Broad mentioned, he was quite fit as a fast bowler. He said in his entire career he only got cramp 3 times, and they were all on day 1 of Ashes series because of that heightened, expectation and nervous energy and all that kind of went into it. So I think it's no surprise really that after that first innings, which was quality, and maybe we'll come on to how good England were from a bowling perspective in that first innings. It's no doubt that the performance dipped a little bit in that second innings, but they tried stuff. They tried to bowl the same lengths as they did, and that didn't work. And then they had to drag the lengths back a bit, go to the bouncer plan to try and sort of do that. And I think just quickly on the leadership of the attack point, let's be honest, Starc's been a leader within a pretty decent attack, and at times will have led that attack of Cummins, Hazelwood, Starc, Lyon plenty of times. I'm not saying it might not be slightly different when he's not got his 2 mates in Hazelwood and Cummins down the other end bowling, but bowling's been around the group for a pretty decent period of time. I think, Baldy, I'm right in saying Doggett's been like in the squads for quite a period of time.
Yeah, he's been on a couple of tours.
Yeah, World Test Championship in the
he's been in the squad. He obviously hasn't played, but he's been around.
It's not like they don't know him. And then from an England perspective, yes, we're missing Broad and Anderson, and no one's really. I think there was a view that they thought Chris Wokes could do that job of sort of transitioning and getting these bowlers up to speed. No pun intended. But I think they actually do have some leaders in that attack. For me, Gus Atkinson just probably looked a little bit short of a gallop across the Test match. I thought he bowled pretty well in the first dig without much reward. I think Bryden Carse is lion-hearted. So they've got leaders in that attack as well. And I think they're a little bit more unconventional as a cricket side in that that they are so bought into each other from a team perspective that they've got 11 leaders out there in the way that they go about things. I don't necessarily think they need one sort of figurehead in that. So for me, that's a little bit of a red herring. Go on, Lip.
Oh, I was just going to say, while we're on the bowlers, we haven't. You kind of prefaced it a little bit there, and Jamie hasn't had it too much. I can see that there's sort of a permanent frown etched on Jamie's face. Why don't you tell us how excited you were watching that first innings bowling for England? Because I think that is what as you say, I'm sure it was what you were all waiting for to see. I've written in my notes, it was one of the best, I think, spells of sustained pressure that I have seen for a long time from a seam group. I thought they were absolutely fantastic. We touched on it before, that Marnus and Steve Smith, when they were batting out there, I thought that was almost the best part. Like, that was fantastic cricket. Some of my favourite cricket of the Test match, when England was bowling brilliantly, Marnus and Steve Smith were fighting hard, and England couldn't quite get that breakthrough. And obviously they then did, and wickets started to tumble. But yeah, let's talk a little positive for England and say, like, that had to be brilliant watching for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. It was like, this is kind of what you wish for, to give it back a little bit. I've seen it over the years where, Brett Lee and McGrath and, etc. have been peppering the English, and Mitchell Johnson and so forth. And all of a sudden it was like some of the Aussies are wearing a few, it was pretty decent. And actually just the bit of sledging that was going on, the vibrancy, the energy from the England quicks. It was like, this is great. This is the plan. This is what we've been building towards. And the lines and lengths that they were bowling were executed. The speeds were really good, and it would look really, really difficult. And we kind of was like, just chomping at the bit. I thought this is, all the plans have played out, and couldn't fault any of the bowlers. Couldn't fault. I think Binksy is slightly critical on Atkinson. I thought he bowled a beautiful sort of first spell. I thought he was immaculate, really, in terms of his role and what he was being asked to do. I thought his speeds were good, and probably slightly unlucky. But Archer coming in, like lasered in. I mean, it was quite hilarious. I thought that that Wethereld's bat was still up here, and he, it's hit him on the leg almost. It's kind of almost like playing Brian Lara's cricket, where you could zone it in and fire it in. It was pretty cool. But I think that's kind of what we'd wish for, wasn't it? To see that quartet plus Stokes come in, lots to be positive about, I guess, moving forward. But got to get the respite, got to get the recovery in, and got to have something to bowl to. I guess it's not a one disciplined sport, is it? You got to have bat and ball, to be cliche, but you need both of those to function. Else, you can have the best bowlers in the world and you won't win a Test match.
Baldy, let's transition and talk a little bit of. I think we've put it in the chat as conspiracy theories.
You don't want to talk about Travis Head?
Yeah, we can talk. Well, we can talk about Travis. Yeah, we can talk about Travis Head.
And if we're talking key performers, I think we can't scoot past him too quickly, can we?
Yeah.
Baldy?
So Travis Head's going to get all the plaudits for his second innings, and his second innings was amazing. It was one of the great Ashes hundreds from the position that they were in, needing to weather the storm that we knew was coming from those England seam bowlers, but to then turn the tide of attack, not only in the context of the Test match with everything being on the line, but the context of having seen 30 wickets fall, a lot of them falling to players trying to attack the opposition bowlers and getting found out. And I think that's the thing that will stand out most to me when I remember this back in 20 years, is not just the audaciousness of his stroke play, but his ability to execute coming into the game, not with a tremendous amount of form, to be fair, and also to be able to execute knowing that everyone else, except for maybe Harry Brook in the first innings, when they went on the attack, did not look like really getting on top of the bowling. Before I come to that, I want to talk about Australia's batting in the first innings, because I thought the top four fought really, really hard. That was your favourite part of the Test. It was mine too. The requirement to fight your way and put a high value on your wicket in the top four, I thought was excellent. I don't fault Smith for getting squared up and nicking off that spinner's technique for 10 years. That's fine. Marnus fought very, very hard, got one on the elbow. Khawaja got a riser. All of that is fair enough. That's fine. Australia's 5 through 8 let their country down on day one, and they let their teammates down badly, because having fought that hard to get through what I think was, in my living memory, the best spell of English bowling from a discipline, a line and length, a consistency, a hostility perspective across their quartet that I can remember in a long, long time on Australian shores. Perfect from them. They fought all the way through that, lost a couple of wickets, and all of a sudden 5, 6, 7, 8 deplorable, disgraceful shots to give their wickets away. Travis Head's kind of swivel pull thing to mid-wicket. Cameron Green fishing outside off stump to a ball he didn't need to play at. Alex Carey was disgraceful hitting the ball down deep third man's throat when he didn't have to. And Mitchell Starc clubbing one when Carey was at the other end, just clubbing one to mid-on. Like that, they are coach killers. They are potentially series-killing brain fades from the Australian batters. And it was only because England had a similar set of brain fades in the second innings and again to a certain extent in the first innings that we got away with that. I think what's happened in this test match is that a couple of really key performances have masked 8 players out of our 11 having a pretty ordinary test match, to be fair. Carey was deplorable. Green's performance was awful. That was an awful shot. Head, if he didn't get 100 in the first innings, we'd be talking about that as one of the worst shots we've ever seen from a number 5 in that situation. So there are great things to talk about from a batting perspective. Marnus in the second innings I thought was fantastic. Perfect second foil to Travis Head to keep everything rolling along. And you can see the difference. When one player is going, the other player is free to score. And I think what we've struggled with over the last 2 years, particularly with Khawaja at the top of the order, and I love Usman Khawaja, you guys know that, but when he struggles to score, the pressure transfers through to the rest of the batting order. Marnus all of a sudden looks like he can't get off the mark, and then the pressure comes on the 3, 4, 5 because all of a sudden you're 2 for 3 for 30 if they both go out. And then, you've absorbed 15 overs into the game and you haven't gone anywhere.
And in a way, that is what happened with that first innings.
100%. We were 4 for 30 because we absorbed all the pressure, didn't get the scoreboard going.
Yeah, and I don't think that was their fault. Like, I'm not blaming that, but
no, they had to fight hard. That was fine.
It speaks to how quickly that can happen. Maybe I'll throw it to you, Binksy. Interested to hear the way Travis Head batted. I mean, there's going to be now a lot of talk of, like, what do Australia do with him for the rest of the series? But I'm interested to kind of get your view on whether you saw anything different that he did that was... Because obviously the English batters did try to a degree to do what he did, come out hard, try and, Harry Brook in particular was running down the wicket in that first innings. They were trying to score at different points. Was there anything that I suppose Head did in terms of kind of picking and choosing his balls to go for rather than the English? Or was it just his day?
Shit, you're coming to me for technical batting analysis. Jesus. The thing I think I'll say about his innings was superb. I didn't see him do anything different to the way that he perhaps played in that World Cup final innings. It had a little bit of similarity to that extent. And look, please don't take this as me wanting to take anything away from Travis Head's innings, because I don't. It was sensational. I think one of the key differences was that he took a little while to get going. I can't remember the exact stat, but he was, 8 off 20 balls or something like that, and then just raced to 50 off 30 odd balls, and then obviously, sprinted to a very, very quick Ashes 100. I think that Gilchrist one in Perth, when you had us on the ropes, seriously, I don't think it's ever going to be beaten. What was that, 57 balls or something like
57,
that?
57, yeah.
And a different game situation, wasn't it? That was a set up a declaration with England bowlers off their feet. So I think this was a special 100. But what he got that the England batters didn't get throughout the course of the game is any support from the other end. And I think you've actually got to give a bit of credit here to Weatherall, who got through 30-odd deliveries and looked pretty solid, actually, at times in that. How can you look solid in 23? But he did. He looked as if he's got a little bit about him. And then similarly, Marnus, came out and, if you kind of look at it from a headlines perspective, 51 off 49, run a ball 50. It wasn't like that, was it? He soaked up, pressure and played second fiddle to Travis Head. And then when you kind of look at what that looked like in England's batting innings, there's a couple of little points where if someone had have had that level of support, if someone had have stuck with Harry Brook for 5 minutes in that, that first innings, that could have been, very different. Jamie Smith was going really, really well. And, let's be honest, that lower order really let him down. They faced 13 balls between them. Mark Wood smashing one up in the air. Bryden Cast hoisting the ball and picking out a man on a 150-metre boundary. I mean, so in short, Head batted brilliantly, but he also had some supports, which I think was really, 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 really important. And that was, when you kind of look back at it, that's where I think England have to be looking at the lessons that they can take from the way that he batted, which was he earned the right to hit them off their length and do the things that he wanted to do. And his mates helped him. And that just wasn't the sort of the contrast in the English innings.
England had a couple of partnerships that made me a little bit concerned. So the Pope Duckett partnership early on in the game on day one, they looked reasonably comfortable. They were finding the gaps. They were driving strongly down the ground when we bowled full to them. And then Harry Brook, while he was at the crease,
that wicket of Pope from Cameron Green. I mean, he only bowled one over in that first innings, but Pope getting out just before the end of that session.
Yeah.
When Brook and Pope were looking good, I think that's massive in terms of the context of the game. Now there were so many other turning points that happened after that one will kind of be forgotten, but they were going well then.
They were, and you could throw Brook gloving off down the leg side to dog it as well. We didn't look like we knew how to get Harry Brook out at that point. And I got laughed at by saying that England would make 338 in the first innings. But when he was batting, he looked like anything was possible. And even when Smith was playing, when Smith was going, he looked very, very comfortable. So there were periods there where England looked comfortable against Australia on day one, but they just gave the advantage away. They didn't capitalise on what they had built by, as Jamie said, going in from second to third to fourth gear, wearing Australia down, and then going, okay, well, like if you have to bowl 20 overs of Brendan Doggett on day one of a test match, what does that look like? Like, what does that look like for us when the ball is 60 overs old and we're facing Boland, who's bowling half volleys, and Brendan Doggett on his first day, and we think we can take Nathan Lyon down because the ball might not turn on day one. England didn't get themselves to the point where they could find those things out because they went so hard that, and look, like or hate the bumper trap. I hate the bumper trap. I think it's very negative cricket, but it worked because it played into England's, and I don't know if this is bluff or double bluff or whatever, but it played into England's hands of wanting to move the game along. So if it works, it's brilliant because they're going to play the hook shot. They're going to hit the ball into the outfield. If it doesn't work, they score very, very quickly, as we saw in the second innings when, a few of those guys in the lower order got going. So, look, it's a big risk from Australia to go to that bumper theory. But, I think you can't underestimate the impact of Cast getting hit by that bumper 2 or 3 balls before he got out. Because I think he got hit and went, right, well, I'm just going to have to pin my ears back now because I can't protect myself from this bowling. And he's a bit better than that. Like, he can protect himself from that bowling because he's a reasonable bat. I think he's going to be a future number 8 for England. But he just couldn't quite protect himself from that. And he decided that even though the ball was outside off, he had to go. I don't blame Wood at number 11. I do blame Jamie Smith, though. I think he had to bat better. He'd already taken, 4 off the over. There were 2 balls left, as you pointed out live, Stu. He could have just hit one into the gap, taken one, and then come back the next over. So England didn't do themselves any favours there.
Right. Let's move on to some of these conspiracy theories. I think we want to spend some time talking about Usman Khawaja's back spasms. And we've talked a lot about golf in the lead up to this series, but more that England have been on the course more often than not. 18 holes has changed the course of the Ashes, and it might be 18 holes from Usman Khawaja rather than from England's 4 balls that changed that. We'll come on to that. Should we just quickly cover the little Jamie Smith tickle down the leg side? Thoughts on that?
I don't know. What do the English boys think? The English fans in the crowd weren't very happy.
I think it's out because I think they've followed the process, haven't they? Which is if the cameras aren't quite synced up, and if there's noise within a frame of the ball passing the bat, that they've got to take that into consideration, and that's what happened. So move on, quit whinging.
Yeah, I'll be the same. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right,
I think
brilliant segment
I think,
then. That
It
No,
just took.
I think it is
It
worth.
just took a long time.
Yeah, I think it's worth explaining the technology though, right? So that real time Snicko stuff, it's not a spectrum of frequencies that you watch. It's actually the audio traveling on our screens. It's right to left as time rolls on. So when you see a spike on the right hand side, it's just happening and it travels left. Yeah, I think it travels left as you watch it. So anything that spikes on the left is kind of happening or has already happened, and as you get kind of seeing the tail end of that audio spike, right? It's not like you see a waveform on an oscillator or an oscillotron where the waveforms are going up and down, or if you look on our Rodecaster here, other podcasting things are available, but as you speak, the levels go up and down. It's not like that. So it is possible for a noise to happen, and if it's one frame behind, that noise is still on the real-time Snicko. It's also important to note that Aussies use a different system to everyone else. We use real-time Snicko as opposed to Hawkeye Ultra Edge. So they all work, well, they both work, two of the systems, slightly differently. So it is easy to get confused by that. I wasn't 100% sure that the decision should have been overturned on the evidence, but I think if you go through, a number of leading umpires, or at least one leading umpire has said, well, this is the process that they followed.
one leading Australian umpire, but yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, there was a similar one in the first innings. I'm trying to remember in Australia's first innings. Was it Labuschagne? Where
because he got bowled off the. Oh,
Yeah.
do you mean? Yeah.
Was it Labuschagne?
I can't remember.
Yeah, where there was a review, and it was where Stokes was going good noise, good noise, good noise.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I thought that was out. I have to be honest, because I thought there was the deviation in the Snicko. So
Was that the one where he scratched the ground, Jamie, as the ball went past? He kind of scratched the ground with his left foot. Yeah.
Was it that? But I thought it looked like the bat. I thought there wasn't a gap between the bat and the ball. So I actually thought that
There was that little murmur on the on the real time Snicko.
Yeah, there was the murmur on the Snicko. So I thought that was
right. Well, this has been an excellently researched and prepared segment. So let's move on. Let's talk about Usman Khawaja now. But Baldy, I want to come at you with two sort of questions on this. Number one, it seemed as if Cricket Australia threw him under the bus a little bit in terms of the way that they talked about why he didn't come out and open the batting. That they talked about back spasms, but initially they were talking about he was off having a bit of treatment and toilet breaks and got his timings wrong. So it looked like they were saying he should have been sort of on top of this. And then I guess the secondary question here is is this an opportunity? Do you think they'll make a change going into the next test in 6 weeks' time after we finish this one pretty early? Do you think it's going to actually manifest a change and maybe head to the top of the order? They can get, I don't know, Green and Webster in, or whatever set of permutations you want to go with.
Yeah, it's got that back spasm has the potential to change 3 careers, to be fair. Like, if you take this to its logical conclusion, and we'll come back to whether or not it's a good idea, but if you take this to its logical conclusion and you throw out 148 years of conventional wisdom about who should open the batting in test matches, from the evidence that we've seen, and we'll have an argument about whether or not it's sustainable going forward or not. Travis Head going to open the batting now looks like a really good idea if you just look at the face of what happened in the second innings. If you have a look at the way that Usman Khawaja's played over the last 12 months, you'd say that, well, if we've seen Travis Head go out and get 100 off 68 balls, and Stu's view, and it's held by others as well, is that you could give Usman Khawaja 5 bats at the moment, and he probably wouldn't get 100 runs off 268 balls. His career might be leading towards a premature closure. I mean, we could be seeing the last of Usman Khawaja, that one that he fended off in that first innings. So it is entirely possible that becomes true. And it might be entirely possible that it's not just Head and Khawaja's career that is affected by this, but someone like Bo Webster or even Mitchell Marsh might come into the side as a specialist batsman in Brisbane and beyond. And who knows, we may be looking at a series in the next summer where we have the same opening pair in our one-day side, Marsh and Travis Head, that we do in our test side. And there's already been talk pre-series about having Marsh in there because he's good at playing the short ball and he's good against genuine pace and he hits the pull shot and the hook shot and the cut shot with great power. So it's entirely possible that whether or not you think it's a good idea, that this is a potential scenario. There is a universe in our multiverse where this is the last game that Usman Khawaja plays. And it's, it's Webster coming in at number 6, Green goes up to 5, or even, we go, actually, well, we really like the way that we played. We'll stick Mitchell Marsh up there. I think it's a very difficult, before you get onto it, I think it's a very different proposition to come out on a good batting wicket on day 2 or day 3 and smash everyone everywhere on a really good, true batting surface than to do the same thing when the ball's ducking around a bit on day 1 of a test match when you're being asked to open the batting. I think those are two very, very different propositions. And I think before everyone gets carried away...
Well, we've got a pink ball test coming up as well.
Let's just have a think about what we're asking this person to do. And if he wants to do it going forward, because he may actually go, well, I'm actually quite happy batting at 5, thanks very much.
Yeah,
and we can have whoever you want.
Yeah, look, it might have just been the euphoria of his dig, but I can't remember exactly how the question was worded, but they asked him, when did you decide that you wanted to open it? And he said, about 2 years ago. So okay. I just wonder whether that was a little bit of a barbed comment to, the selectors in terms of he wanted to do this when you were going through the many potential replacements to David Warner. So that was on the TNT coverage. But yeah, he got asked that question and he seemed to allude to the fact that he stuck his hand up to do it, a while ago. So yeah, really interesting. And that was part of why I asked that question, Baldy, was there were just a couple of things that were said in those sort of press conferences that, spoke to me a little bit about the players kind of getting a message to the coaching staff. Or the coaching staff getting a message to the players through the conversations that they were having with the media guys. It seems as if they'd thrown Usman under the bus a little bit because they could have easily just come off and said, "Look, he had a back spasm, that's why he didn't bat. We hope he's right for Brisbane." But they didn't really shut that down the first time round, and look, that might have just been it might have just been the way that appeared on the English TV coverage.
I think it would be, unless he's injured for this, unless Usman Khawaja is actually injured and cannot feature in the second test, I don't see how, in a game that's finished in 2 days, you thought before those 2 days that he was the best man for the job. He's had 1 innings and he's nicked off. I don't see how you can go, well, now he's not. Now he's not for the rest of the series, and that's the end of his career. I do think that would be a bit weird, even though, yes, Travis Head has gone up and done the job.
This has been the weirdest 48 hours of Test cricket that we've ever had.
Well, I don't know. We've had a few weird ones, but
this is the weirdest 48 hours of Test cricket that we've ever had. This is the shortest Test match since 1921 in the Ashes, right? No Test match has finished inside 2 days for almost 100 years. In fact, over 100 years. It's bizarre, and for bizarre things to happen off the back of that is not going to surprise me at all. I think it is entirely possible that the Australian selectors look at this and go, you know what, we've actually learned something from this. We've got an adjustment that we can make that potentially means we're more successful going forward. And if Travis Head does genuinely want to do it, it would shock me if he said that was 2 years ago. Because if he said that he wanted to open 2 years ago, Binksy, and we picked a whole slew of other openers instead of him, that's madness. Because there are a whole bunch of middle order contenders that could have been playing for Australia in the 4, 5, 6 position that would have made a hell of a lot more sense than to try and manufacture an opener out of McSweeney or Marnus or Harris or, any one of those guys. If we could have just slotted Travis Head up there, it's easy to say in hindsight, but he's opened the batting 3 or 4 times.
Steve Smith said that they discussed Nathan Lyon opening in this innings as well.
Yeah, that was never going to fly. That is we have to explore all of the avenues and put all the cards on the table. But you can't do that. That's outrageous, even for someone as
First-class teams have done that quite a few times.
Yeah.
I can think
I hear what you're saying and I agree with you, but there's no way that happens in the test match.
I'd be
Baldy,
with
I'll try and find the footage,
yeah.
and because 100% that was the response. And look, as I said, it might have just been in the euphoria of he's literally just walked off with 2 stumps, and he's in his Birkenstocks and his sweaty warm up top, and probably having chugged a quick beer. He still got froth on his moustache from from that celebration. Jamie,
Can I just say? Can
on,
I
mate.
just say? I'd be with Lippy here. That I'd be more than happy for Cricket Australia to put Travis Head at the top of the order now for the series and drop Khawaja because I think it's a small sample size to make that judgment, but actually going into Brisbane where it is a day night, it's a pink ball, then okay, if he can do it there, then maybe he's got a point. But I think it's you can go early with this. Yeah, he's the point taken, brilliant 100, not taking anything away from him. But it's a small sample size, and he's not done it on day one of a test match in bowler-friendly conditions, arguably. So I think, yeah.
My 2 cents really, really quickly. I'd ask him if he wants to do it, and then I'd be having a conversation between captain and coach as to whether that's the right thing to be doing in the medium term. And if it is, then I think you pull the trigger on it. Again, I don't think there's any room for sentiment in Test cricket. So, the example I always give is Ian Healy got dropped, didn't he? They were going to give him one. He wanted one last farewell test in Brisbane, and they were like, "No, there's someone better than you that can influence the game better than you. We're bringing him in now," and that was Gilchrist. And those sliding doors moments can make a massive difference, as Baldy, alluded to. Could change the careers of 2 or 3 players. So I think, I think if they think that's the right thing to do, and I do think that is the right thing to do for them, it gives Australia so many more options. But we'll come on to that. Jamie, we've not heard much from you in the last few minutes. What should England do? There's been a lot of talk, and it's really easy to know what that talk was. But we were talking off air before we started. Ben Stokes walked off from an interview with Jonathan Agnew, who wanted to press home the point that England should go and play a warm-up game. Michael Vaughan has come out with similar comments that there's a 2-day pink ball game against a Cricket Australia 11 or President's 11 or something like that coming up in Canberra. Your view on the prep that England now need to do and where next for them, and maybe let's put the sort of psychology hat on, and what will they be doing now to kind of mentally prepare and mentally process, I guess, what's happened in the last 48 hours.
So I think kind of being slightly contradictory to maybe some of the points I've made, but I think Stokes is bang on when he says we're not going to change anything. We're going to, in terms of preparation, we're going to keep doing what we do, because I think as soon as you start to, actually now we are going to play it in this 2-day game, we are going to do stuff, then that's when the cracks start to appear in the overall philosophy of what you're trying to bring about. So as much as it frustrates us, they have a way of working. This is how they do it. They have had success with it. They have their processes, and they just need to double down on those. So from a PR perspective, it doesn't look great when he's saying to Ben Stokes, saying to Jonathan Agnew, we're not going to play in that game. But I completely get it, and I'm glad he said what he did if I'm inside that camp, because that is true to their values. They've planned how they want to prepare for it, so they have all their processes, and they just double down on them now. What that will look like probably internally is intensity of practice, and people will always say, well, it's not the same as playing matches, and it's not, but they've got a methodology where that practice is really, really intense, and it enables them to get into a mindset of where they want to get to. So it will just be really double downing on that, whether that's more net sessions or it's increasing the intensity or the frequency of them, it will be that. But I think, from an experience of doing something similar in county cricket last year, when you have that setback, it's really easy to go, oh, it didn't work, so we'll change it. Whereas the really tough decision is to say, no, we believe in this. This is the way we do stuff, and we keep doing it. And that's the hard choice to make, but the brave one, and the one that that England are clearly going to make. So I kind of really on side with them not wanting to change it. Now, do I think that they need to reflect? Absolutely. And you'd like to think that what they will be doing is having an interrogation, a post-mortem of what has happened in the last madness of 48 hours, which is, I agree with Baldy, the mental 48 hours. So reflect on it. But what are some of the things that we will change going into Brisbane, just in terms of our approach? And is it about using the gearbox a little bit more? Is it about, I mean, I got poo-pooed for it, but is it about being 40 for none at lunch? And that's, I'm being facetious there, but it is a little bit more about dropping anchor early doors so that we're not none for one, in that first over, or sticking Mark Wood in, to open the innings, because you sort of get to it and you go, well, just put somebody random in the top order. But I think it would just be about having a bit more clarity, perhaps, about the approach. But I don't think they'll be changing too much in terms of the processes, and I completely get that, and I'm on side with that.
But Baldy, can I get your view on what you think England should do before perhaps me or Stu colour your views with our thoughts? We've got Jamie's measured and actually, other than his 40 for non-comment, a relatively coherent point.
Look, the bowlers don't need to change anything. I think they have only bowled for 2 days, to be fair, and so they should be fresh as daisies with another 10 or 12 days worth of rest going into Brisbane. The key thing for me would be for those bowlers now, being 1-0 down at the series, they might have to adjust their I was going to say pitching rotation, but bowling rotation about who they expected to play in that Brisbane test, because I think they would now be thinking, well, we actually do need to go in with both Archer and Wood if we weren't going to already. And I think Carson Atkinson probably would have played anyway, but, if they were thinking about rotating one of Archer and Wood out, now I think they're definitely saying, well, we want all 4 of those guys playing in Brisbane. Shoaib Bashir is not going to get a look at least until Adelaide, if not Melbourne, I wouldn't have thought at this point. So they might tweak their bowling rotations a little bit, given the extra rest and the number of overs that they've bowled. I think they should stick to their process. If they have got, and let's hope that they do, a contingency plan that says, what does our preparation look like if we win the first test in Perth, or if we lose the first test in Perth? If we lose the first test in Perth, this is the process that we're going to go through. If they've established that before the series has started, that's exactly what they should do. And if that doesn't mean sending Zach Crawley to face the Prime Minister's 11 and getting him in the nets and building back his confidence that way, then that's what they should go through. The only batter I think that external people would want facing the Prime Minister's 11 is Zach Crawley. But I think that's a question that only Zach Crawley can answer. Does he want 2 more bats so that he can sort of see if he can get 2 more scores? But by the corollary is like, well, if he gets 2 low scores, now he's got 4 on the bounce and he goes into Brisbane at the nadirish of nadirs. So I think it's more about just not necessarily doubling down on their approach. I think there are some things that they can learn about how long they bat at the crease and about how they drive balls on the up. Because I think that's the major adjustment that England will need to go to do in their prep for this Brisbane test. In England, ball goes sideways. Absolutely, no question about it. Ball goes through the air, ball goes sideways. But if you can get to the top of the bounce in England, you can hit the ball on the up and probably more often than not get beaten by the bounce. What we saw in the second innings in particular, I think it was Brooke, it was Root, it was Pope, all got beaten driving on the up. So did Cameron Green, to be fair, from the Australian perspective. So I think that's the adjustment they need to make. They need to find a way to adjust to that. But other than that, they should go and do the things that they've done that have got them this far, because to change now would be madness.
Yeah, I mean, you look at again. Binksy's been talking about the goldfish stuff. It wouldn't surprise me at all if England now go and win the second test. I don't think this series is over by any means. I think they did a lot of good things in that game that they can look at and go, yes, we have this Australian team is still there for the taking if we can do these things. I think your point about the driving is the number one thing in my head as well, because when they waited for the right, when they let Australia bowl to them in their zones, and I think Ollie Pope was the one who did that the best in that first innings. When he waited, like he got balls on the leg, on his legs, got half volleys, he put them away, and he got. I don't think he played rash shots, and he got to just about a runnable 50, and it's being able to think, okay, we tried to dominate this way, but that didn't quite work because the shots that we played in that innings, or in the second innings, or in Crawley's case, the first innings, they don't work here. So we do have to reflect. They always like to look forward rather than look back. But they're smart. They're smart people. They're smart. Brendan McCullum, Ben Stokes, they've got a lot of cricketing knowledge in there. I'm sure they're looking at this going, okay, like we can't just go and play all those same shots again. We are still going to be aggressive. We are still going to back ourselves to hit boundaries and take on the bowling and do all this. But okay, maybe these are not the attacking shots we play. We play different shots. Or if we want to drive, we have to get down the wicket, or we do other things. They are going to have that little bit of look in the mirror, accountability, kind of thinking about how do we actually put our game plan, which is to be positive, into action technically. Would you make any? Would you make any changes, Binksy, in terms Crawley, as Baldy said, Crawley's the one, but there's no one really in that lineup that would then go and open.
I'm not saying we should drop him. My question is, should he go and have an extra bat?
Yeah,
for the Prime Minister against the Prime Minister's 11. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
well, I think quite a few people would say that they like a lot. I have seen a lot of people saying Crawley should be dropped.
There's a lot of people outside of that environment saying that he should be dropped, right? So I think it was Raj that said this. It's never quite as good as you think it is, and it's never quite as bad as you think it is after a defeat in terms of where you're at. And that's where I see England. And to your point, Lip, I don't think that, I still think that this could be a real topsy-turvy, ebb and flow series. I don't think that momentum and the way that we've talked about this is a factor yet. Now, that's not to say that Australia won't go on and win this series 5-0. They might, but I genuinely don't think that if there is a landslide victory for either team, and it still could be either team, I don't think it will necessarily be because they've got on a roll and it's just win, win, win. I think each game is its own little contest within the context of the series, and England could easily go to Brisbane and turn it on. But similarly, Australia could easily go to Brisbane. Cummins is fit and raring to go. It's a pink ball test match. We've talked about that ad infinitum already. I don't think they should change the prep at all. But I will just preface this with one thing. If Zach Crawley goes to Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes and says, do you know what I think is best for my prep? I'd like to go to Canberra and play in this game. Then let him go and do that. But I think it's got to come from the individual saying, I feel as if I want this preparation. As an outsider, looking in and looking at, we've been lucky enough with the podcast to be able to, to get into grounds and go and watch the players practicing and things like that. The one thing I would say is England, and this is not just England, but every single international side have got at their disposal so many resources to be able to try and practice really, really hard. And I think it was your point, Baldy, if he goes and nicks off twice in Canberra, what has he got from that? Isn't he far better off getting, a box of brand new pink kookaburras and having someone replicate hammering the length, whether that's with a dog stick or whether that's with, his own bowlers? Because then, yes, if he does nick one, it's not the end of his practice. He can carry on and work on that. Whereas if you send him off to Canberra, and let's be honest, it won't be on a similar surface. It won't be against similar bowlers. And in fact, if you were that Australian A side, you might even change, who you might bowl at him just to sort of deprive him of that practice. You'd bring on a dibbly-dobbly or get your spinner on early or whatever. So, yeah, for me, this stuff around, changing the whole itinerary of the tour, and that's what we're talking about. That they will know what their plans are. Now, granted, they will probably have to find a couple of extra tee times That's the only change to the itinerary, isn't it? That they've got these 3 days off when they thought they were going to be playing cricket in Perth. That, you know, they're just going to have to find, you know, a couple of lunch bookings at wineries and stuff like that. That's the only difference I think England should have for their prep moving into Brisbane.
I think that was my one of my points, Binksy. That, you know, the I'm not going to get my words right. The access that they've got to so many means that they can replicate, you know, the conditions and really nail those things. So you know, completely agree with the guys in the bar that, you know, the playing on the up is the technical area that you'd want to work on, but you're so much more better doing that in a controlled environment rather than do it in an uncontrollable environment, and that is ultimately how England have been preparing as well. You know, like this is the way we approach. We manufacture our training to enable us to do that. So I think it makes perfect sense. I think it's really easy, and we spoke about this on the preview of people that have played, you know, in the 1950s and 60s and 80s or whatever, you know, where they went out there for 6 months and, you know, it was a booze cruise. You know, it's easy to give those opinions, or they should be playing loads of cricket, but, you know, the game's changed, and don't want to go over that point, but it is a very different sport now to what it was.
Yeah, and they're never going to be able to get that back. So, you know, there's never going to be a scenario by the way in which you prepare for a series is to play 6 warm-up games and have time in the middle. They have to find other ways to replicate that, as you've said. We're coming over the hour mark already. Jamie, you want a quick rant on the UK TNT television coverage?
Yeah, not to throw anybody under the bus, but, you know, I was a bit disappointed with the coverage. You know, it was out of sync at times, like the crowd noise, couldn't get that. You know, like the 60-odd thousand people in that stadium, you want to be hearing that. It couldn't really. It felt like somebody was sitting at home commentating on the game rather than actually being in the ground. And as much as I love my cycling and the Tour de France, I don't really want commentators that talk about cycling probably heading it up when there are, you know, probably cricketing experts that could do a better view. There are 4 individuals on this pod that would probably be more learned to position themselves in that post. But I think, just a little bit dull. But I felt that last time that TNT had the coverage, you know, where it was for the last trip down under, it was just dull. But maybe we just get used to watching a very high quality level of broadcasting back home here in the UK for domestic games, and then domestic tests, and then when we go overseas, it is just a cheaper version because of the cost. But just a bit disappointed. I think you had a great shout, Binksy, about trying to sync it up with Test match special commentary. I need to figure out how to do that. I think I did think about watching the cricket on mute at one point, but that just wasn't doing it for me. But rant over. There we are.
Well, look, just
more important things in this world to think about.
Well, mate, but absolutely, echo your comments. And for the boys in the bar, they've got 2 very, very good sports broadcasters, Rob Hatch and Alistair Eakin, who are multi-sport and you know, kind of specialists in other areas in the lead chair. And then they've just got 3 cricket folks, Steve Finn, Alistair Cook and Ebony Rainford Brent. So you've got 5 commentators doing a whole day's cricket, and the 2 lead commentators aren't cricket folks. So I've got to admit, I was at one point trying to figure out if I could get the Channel 7 commentary. I'd have even rather listened to Mark Moore. So that probably will give you the level of dissatisfaction. But yes, went with the option that Jamie suggested of getting the Bluetooth speaker out and getting Test match special on, mute the TV, and all you got to do, Jamie, is sync up the sound of the bowler's foot hitting the crease on both, and then you're done. That's how
you've got a lot of time on your hands, mate, to do that.
No, I haven't, mate. I just sent my 15-year-old down in the morning and said, right, get this set up. I'll be down in a minute, and put the kettle on.
Yeah. Okay.
We won't talk predictions for this Brisbane test because I'm sure we're going to have, over the course of the next 13 days, a little bit more of an update on injuries potentially from the Australia camp. Pat Cummins, I think they're trying to fox England. They're saying he's 50-50. I think he's nailed on to play in that Brisbane Test match. Doesn't look as if the same will said for Josh Hazlewood, but we'll come on to that probably next week, won't we? On our usual recording time. But boys, any other business before we wrap up?
Nothing from me, Your Honour.
No, good.
Brilliant.
Well, I actually feel better than I did yesterday, so this has been really good therapy, just to be able
cathartic. Get it out, get it all out.
Cathartic, peer support amongst learned friends.
It's not over, Jamie. One game. It's not over.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there we go. We have come full circle. England shouldn't declare the Ashes and come home. They should stick around for at least the second test at the Gabatoir in Brisbane, which kicks off in, I think, 12 days' time in Australia. We will, of course, be back to cover that with a preview, as well as a bunch of other cricket going on as well, which we've neglected on the last couple of podcasts, but we will get your New Zealand updates very shortly. Other cricket going around the world in This Week in Cricket, which will hit your feeds about this time next week. But for now, it is good night and God bless from us here on the Top Order podcast. We'll see you soon. Good night.